In China, it's not uncommon for foreign journalists to be temporarily detained by the authorities. Happens on a fairly regular basis, covering sensitive stories like dissidents, political anniversaries, that kind of thing. I have to say, though, I was pretty surprised to have been picked up shooting photos of fishing boats. Ever since early May, when China moved an oil drilling platform into disputed waters in the South China Sea, there have been scores of Vietnamese fishing boats and Chinese fishing boats, along with other types of maritime security and Coast Guard ships, facing off around this rig. Now, the Chinese boats are trying to keep the Vietnamese away. The Vietnamese boats are trying to get as close to the oil rig as possible, and both sides say that the rig is in their territorial water. The disagreement sparked anti-China riots in Vietnam, where, despite their similar political systems, there's actually deep mistrust of China. I've followed China-Vietnam relations on and off for about 15 years, covering diplomacy in Beijing, then working as Reuters bureau chief in Vietnam for 3.5 years. I speak both languages. I have to say, this oil rig incident actually has raised tensions to about the highest I've ever seen. I wanted to find out more about where these fishing boats were from and what the incentives were for the captains or the companies that are sending them out there to square off at sea. So I matched descriptions of a boat that the Vietnamese say rammed and sank a Vietnamese trawler, identified it as belonging to a company that had launched some boats that were similar from a small port in Hainan earlier this year, and went down there to look into the connection. I took pictures of the boats in the harbor and tried to talk to some people who were involved in operating the boats. And that's when I got picked up, first by company employees who wouldn't show me any identification, and then I was handed over to the border police. My detention, which lasted about 2 or 3 hours, shows, I think, how sensitive the standoff with Vietnam is right now. The company men and the police clearly did not have any interest in those photos of the Hainan boats being published, perhaps because they thought they might be able to be used to corroborate the Vietnamese account of the incident, which was caught on tape. A few weeks into the standoff, 2 boats collided. The Vietnamese say that the Chinese boat rammed their boat. The Chinese say that a Vietnamese boat was in the way. The result, though, was that the Vietnamese boat sank and relations worsened between the two countries. Since the two countries fought a brief border war in 1979, Beijing and Hanoi have made a point of putting their past behind them and working to improve the relationship. Still, it seems like there may be some time before things get back to normal between these two communist brothers.